Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a TV series, and it's one I've been wanting to talk about for a while on the channel. It is Firefly. Now, Firefly is one of my favourite sci-fi shows. I got into it because I was a huge fan of Star Wars, Star Trek, all the kind of huge franchises at the time. And then I discovered Firefly, and it became one of my favourite shows too. It was a show that had the potential to be a huge franchise, probably not on the same level as your Battlestar Galacticas, your Star Warses, your Star Treks, but it had potential to be up there. Unfortunately, that never happened. In this video, we'll talk a bit about why. Now, my introduction to the show was when it was aired on the Sci-Fi channel in the early 2000s. I used to come home from school and they would show Firefly and Star Trek The Next Generation on the Sci-Fi channel. So that was how I discovered Firefly and got into it. And then as I got older, I would watch the full show, Serenity. I would read some of the comics and stuff like that. As a story overview, it is a space western. So it's essentially about this crew on the ship, and we're far in the future after a civil war. And it's just basically about these characters making their way through the universe, completing odd jobs here and there, with sort of overarching story plots as well. Now, what stood out to me about Firefly, and still does to this day, is how unique every character is. So every character is written to be their own specific personality. They all follow really kind of clear archetypes though, which is really cool. I've always thought that Firefly, it's written a lot and it plays out a lot like a tabletop RPG. If you've ever played Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons, or many of the other RPGs out there. So everybody has their own sort of style and their own strengths and weaknesses. Take Captain Mal, for example. He is sort of, if you were in a tabletop RPG, he's basically maxed out his points in charisma. You know, he's the leader of the group. He's the one who talks themselves out of situations and into situations, and he leads the group. Meanwhile, you've got, you know, your engineers, you've got your soldiers, you've got, for example, your pacifist, which if you've ever played a tabletop RPG, you always end up with at least one character that tries to refrain from combat. And then you've also got the sort of magic element of a tabletop RPG. However, in this case, it's with sort of scientific powers and mutation. On top of that, you've got this really, really well thought out world where basically everything has moved into sort of one central government, and the crew of the Serenity that we follow during the storyline basically operate as mercenaries, pirates on their own. You've also got other factions like the Reavers, which are basically pirates with no mercy, and they're explored a bit more in the film as well, which we'll talk about too. Now, unfortunately, Firefly only had one season. There's a lot of reasons why. It never really had the support behind it when it first aired. The strangest thing to me when I got into Firefly was finding out that apparently when they first showed it on television, they didn't show it in the correct sequence, which confused a lot of people. And it really is a show that you have to watch in the correct season. There's a lot of standalone episodes, but there is a storyline that follows across it. Particularly to understand a lot about the characters and who they are, particularly Captain Mal, for example, you really do need to see the pilot episode to understand why he is so sort of against the idea of having a crew in the first place, because you have to understand what happened when he was in the war as a soldier. Now, it only had that one season and got cancelled, but the impact it's had since has been immense. I mean, in pop culture, think about TV shows like Community, where it's referenced a few times. It is a show that for years there's been online campaigns to bring it back. Obviously, we got the film Serenity, which worked as a sort of farewell to the crew. It gave us sort of one final adventure, and it's a great film. We've had comics and books as well, which have been really good at kind of expanding the lore and going into detail about some of the characters that maybe haven't had as much time in the show on their own. It's just a shame that we never got more seasons of the show when it was running. But it does have a dedicated fan base, and I'm sure if this video has appeared on your YouTube, it's because you're a Firefly fan as well. And the good news is that recently there was the announcement of a new Firefly project with most of the original cast returning, and I believe it's going to be animated. But I'm really excited for it because there's still so much space in the universe of Firefly for stories to be told, you know? There's so much that can be expanded on and adapted. And I think in animation, that also gives you the opportunity to do time jumps, you know, so we can have more backstory episodes about the characters before they joined the crew. We can have more sort of short one episode adventures as well. So I'm really excited for the future of it, and I just hope that the new Firefly project is well received, because after all these years of waiting for more, it would be a shame if it didn't get the viewership that it needed. But Firefly is up there, one of my favourite shows. It's the show I always recommend to people if they're getting into sci-fi as well. If you've already seen things like Star Wars and Star Trek, Firefly really does stand out. And every single episode of the show is brilliant, you know. There's not a bad episode in my opinion. And you've got Serenity, which as a film works really well too. Have you seen Firefly? What do you think about the show? Are you glad it's getting a follow-up now? Personally, I'm delighted that we're getting more Firefly, and I'm really excited to talk about it when it comes out on this channel.